wanted to bring in an old familiar face to me that I have not had it on the show yet, and happy to do it today. Dakota Watson, WRDW Television, and telling us about a good cause today. Former intern at 107.5 The Game, sir. Good to see you, man.
Hey, always great to see you, Tim. How we doing?
I'm doing well. Is that a master's tee you are required to wear there, being in
Yeah,
Augusta and all?
exactly. I
Mhm.
wish I was sponsored by Augusta National. That'd be cool,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, I
I
don't
wouldn't
know
have
if
to
they
pay 200
I don't know
bucks
if
for the
they I don't think they do that necessarily. Maybe just,
shirt.
Tiger Woods these days, certainly not a
Yeah,
Phil sponsorship.
no,
Uh,
exactly.
let's start with what you have to tell us and what the good you are doing in the world these days. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this program, to help the world be a better place in my small way, and that's exactly what you're doing, and doing it in Colombia. Let's hear all the details about the PD3 Foundation, please.
Yeah, also just trying to do my very small part as well. A few buddies of mine and I started up a nonprofit foundation. I guess you could technically say unofficially about a year or so ago. Unfortunately, it was after one of our really good friends passed away by suicide. It was January of about a year and a half ago now, almost. When that happened, we just kind of came together and we were like, we have to do something. We can't just say now what? And look at each other. We've got to decide. How can we stop this from happening to other friends and families and other loved ones? I've been impacted by this, personally from family members before. So this time around too, it was like, even bigger slap in the face in terms of like, okay, you've got to wake up and do something about this. So as you said, just doing our small part, that's what we're trying to do now. It's called the PD3 Foundation in honor of Parker Dubois from Columbia. He played football at Cardinal Newman High School in Columbia, private school there. And so we just decided we wanted to start up something for him in honor of him to keep his name alive and keep his memory alive. So what we're doing now is we've got a couple small time things that we've done before in terms of like 7-on-7 football tournaments that we did with the community just to try to bring people in and raise some awareness and some funds. So we did one last year. We're doing one again this year. It's coming up in just a couple weeks, actually. I think 2 weeks from today. And we're doing a community-wide one on June 10th, 2 Fridays from today. Not too late to sign up. You can definitely still do that on the website. You can see there on the bottom. And you can just go sign up a team. It's not super duper competitive. It is still competitive. We get into it a little bit like we did last year, but it's more so just to get people together and talk about the importance of mental health and talk about how everybody struggles with mental illness. Everybody struggles with depression, anxiety, and especially, unfortunately, with young men. We think that that's somebody we really need to start reaching out to and contacting in our communities are young men who feel like they really can't express themselves or don't know how or think it's not allowed as a young man that you can't do that. But we're there to tell you that you absolutely can do that, and we encourage that. So the next day on June 11th, on Saturday, we've got 5 or 6 teams coming in to play a high school 7-on-7 tournament. We're going to have people from NAMI there, people from the National Foundation for Suicide Prevention to come talk to these young kids who are in high school to let them know, get rid of that stigma of it's not cool to talk about how you're feeling and not cool to talk about mental health. So we're trying to, impact as many young people as we can. So please check out the website if you get a minute. We've got a lot of great stuff on there. We can tell you about Parker. We tell you about our mission, what we do. And if you feel so led, we also have a donation link on there as well. It's a nonprofit, so you do get a tax. It's tax deductible. We send you an email with a receipt right away. So, anyways, just check us out. We're trying to do a lot of good stuff for our community.
PD3foundation.com. Again, the website to go check out that uh, Dakota Watson is telling us about here. And man, kudos to you for first of all doing something, right? We just saw this recently in the sports world with Steve Kerr and his emotional reaction to the latest school shooting tragedy and calling out politicians to do something and not just sit on their power and the whole thing. And I don't care what which way you lean politically. I think emotionally, we all agree with Steve Kerr, right? Got to stop this mess.
Yep,
It's
exactly.
it's ridiculous, and so I feel like I was hearing your version of that in a lot of ways
Yeah.
with your friends passing and now doing this. So my question is, Was it because Parker was a football guy, you went the 7-on-7 route? Was that the thinking about it?
Yeah, so that was the main reason for sure. He was a stud athlete. I always joke with his older brother that Parker was probably twice as good as Evan, his older brother. But I don't know if I'd say it to his face. But hey, just an absolute athlete. He was an all-state and all that. So he loved football. That was his favorite place in the world, was on the football field. So we thought, what better way to do that, and what better way to reach young men, especially, I mean, I played football. I can tell you, especially in a huddle, you don't want to sit there and ask everybody how you feel that day. That's not popular. It's not cool. So, reaching those young football players, those young men, especially, that we can just tell them it's okay. Football players also, we've worked with the Hayden Hurst Foundation. He's such a great example of somebody who has gone through the exact same stuff and can now tell you, that it's okay to talk about how you feel. So yeah, that was a big reason, because Parker played football. Also, Jacob August is our executive director, so obviously former USC football player. He's got a hand in all that kind of stuff, so he knew how to set those things up. But we've got a lot of people helping us out. Kerry Rich is on our board as well, former USC basketball player. Now, also new gig over there at the school with the team. So got a lot of good people behind us.
PD3foundation.com. Again, the website to go check it out. And you said 2 Fridays from now, so 2 weeks from today. And this is that part, the Friday night stuff. Do you have a team? Are you going to play?
Of course, I got to defend my championship from last year. I hear that you have Perry Orth coming on the show here in a minute, and I've
Uh-huh.
given him a hard time, not really to his face, kind of chatter betwixt people here. So maybe I should finally talk to him one on one here. But his team lost to us in the championship. He thinks we cheated. So when you talk to him, let him know.
Wait a second. So you outdueled Perry Orth from the quarterback.
Those are
You were,
your words, not mine. And
but
if he's already listening, just know I want no part of that.
but
Okay?
you played quarterback though, right?
Of course I did.
Okay. So you are higher on so
I see where you're going with this.
did you turn down the offensive coordinator job there at Cardinal Newman?
Right, exactly.
He was above it? Okay.
No chance. No chance. Not qualified.
Good stuff there for sure. And I've seen you play the pickup basketball. Have you improved the
Cool.
fitness level since those years ago?
I will tell you, I that was kind of a shocker to me when we played last year. I was begging for them to not be allowed to rush the quarterback, because, man, I am so out of shape. I've put on like a million pounds since the playing days. So I was like, can we at least do like a 3 Mississippi rule so I have a second here? Because if y'all are just running right at me, I'm going to get sacked and I'll have to go. I'll play center or something. I can't do this anymore. So the answer is no. I have not improved my athletic abilities since you've last seen me.
But you must have had Jacob August on the team, and I'm guessing you just threw it to him every time. Is that what happened?
So he actually was only on my team for the championship game, which is
Mhm.
probably why Perry also thinks we cheated, because Jacob had his own team that he was doing with some family friends.
Nah.
And then I was like, listen, if you're going to have Mike Matulis and Perry, or we at least let me steal Jacob from the other team, because he didn't make the championship. So let me take him. So I think he scored in the championship. Yeah. It's okay.
Absolutely under protest. We'll get the other side of this. We'll get to the bottom of this thing for
I'd
sure.
love to hear it. Yeah.
But anybody can hop in there, obviously for a good cause, and semi-competitive is the best way to do it for
Exactly.
sure. When you're stealing players from other teams, clearly semi-competitive stuff, man. I am really bummed out that I didn't get to play 7-on-7 or flag football growing up. I think it's such a great game for kids. I get to coach my kids doing it now, and I think flag football is perfect when you're talking about youth sports, because they get plenty of action, but they also get the time to actually get coached. And I think it's the perfect combination of the two, man.
Yeah, and I think it's great too. But people have asked me, because huge football fan, but people have asked me, if you have a son, are you gonna let him play football? Number one, and are you gonna let him play young? So I think that's a great alternative. I mean, of course, I'm gonna let my son play football, but highly encourage slash force him to. But if we get to the point where he's a young kid in fifth, sixth grade, I'm probably just gonna start out with 7-on-7, some no contact stuff, because learn the fundamentals. Makes me a little nervous having kids trying to learn how to hit each other and whatnot. It only takes one side of that to not know how to do it correctly. So
Oh man, I feel like you just in that you have kind of typified the larger context of the major issue out there of talking about any kind of mental health or basically being vulnerable to weakness, right? Like
Sure.
my 7-year-old last night had a baseball practice. He forgot his water. It was
Mhm.
hot. It was long, and he was complaining. I was like, "Hey, man, you kinda gotta suck it up right now, right?"
Yeah.
And that I feel like is how all coaches and adult males were to me growing up,
Mhm.
and that developed toughness for sure, but it also develops a culture of, "Hey, quit your whining. Don't talk about it."
Shove it down, right? Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
how do you strike that balance knowing that, and then knowing that shutting it down and shutting up can also lead to a lot of terrible, terrible stuff?
that's a really tough one, actually. What's funny is I didn't even realize that's what I was kind of talking about a little bit there when you brought up. That's a tough one for me because I will say just naturally I am very much of the toughing it out kind of guy.
Well, I think guys are, like,
Yeah,
just biologically, I think that's kinda how most of us are built and then taught for sure,
yeah.
and, like, in good ways,
Mhm.
some good ways, I should say. I mean, we've had Savell Newton and Corey Miller on the program. They're doing great work in the mental health, realm as well with their organizations, but they also admit very candidly that they had some major, major issues with depression and the whole thing, and it got bad.
Yeah,
And I think the football culture especially cultivates that in a lot of ways. I just think naturally, right? It's a violent game, man. You can't go out there and tiptoe around and talk about your feelings like you mentioned in the huddle.
right.
But then there has to also be resources and I think away from the field,
Mhm.
there has to be some sort of support set up for these teams, these young men to feel like they can let some of that stuff go. And is that part of what your foundation or the education that your foundation is doing?
Sure. Yeah, just really creating that safe space, kind of like you're talking about, whether it's off the field or a coach, player, teammate, family member, whatever it is that you can kind of go to. Yeah, you're right. Football is extremely violent, and you have to bring it every single day mentally, almost more so than physically, to be able to push through. Or else, yeah, if you're not a tough team, you're not going to win the game. Like that's just plain and simple. But there's a difference between being tough and then being mentally strong as well. So finding that balance is really important. Yeah, because you know what? If we've seen NFL players, college players have to step away from the game because they've said, I'm not mentally in the right space right now. So applaud them for doing that and realizing that and knowing that that's what's important. I think it was Marshawn Lynch who said, "Take care of your chickens," maybe or something like that. So some that's obviously he was half joking, but something like that. It's true.
And then can you tell us more about Parker and I read a little bit up on him, and it seems like it was not just good at sports, but one of those guys who is kind of like a shining guy, if
Yeah,
that makes any sense, like
yeah, he
a
was.
magnetic personality kind of deal.
Yeah, he definitely was. So I mean, yeah, a superstar athlete. He played all over the field. Get him the ball, and he was doing good things with it. But yeah, aside from that, he was so much more than that. I always considered him a little brother. I was best friends with his older brother since they moved to South Carolina when they were both in middle school, I think. And I think he was in elementary school actually. But he was just the guy that, like everybody says life of the party. That's like the go-to cliche. But I mean, he really was. Like he just as soon as he walked in the room, he was making jokes, cutting up with everybody. And I think that's one of the things too that made it so hard on all of us. We knew that he'd been battling with depression. He had gone to a rehab facility once before, so we knew that that was a thing. We knew that, but we also knew his personality. We knew who he was. We knew that he just loved to joke around and hang out with people. So that was why it was so tough for us to kind of wrap our head around it. Because he was the funny guy. He had so much fun. Like he loved life. He loved everything about it. So um, that was that. That is it's tough that to really go back and think about. Maybe some signs that we missed potentially, or at least me. I feel that way sometimes. Or just realizing that you don't know what somebody's going through at all times, or that maybe they put on a little bit in front of people and can make it seem like I'm still feeling like the life of the party today and make you think that way, but then they're not at all that day. Whether it's just that day or something they're going through, but you never know what somebody's thinking or feeling. So yeah, I mean, it's tough to think about honestly, but
Oh, I can imagine, but, I appreciate you now kind of channeling all of that in the most positive direction you can. As you were talking about that, it reminded me of Sel Newton talking about his former teammate and Kenny McKinley and being a really smiley guy, really magnetic type personality, and that's what was all part of the shock and the sadness and the whole thing around his situation as well. So again, PD3Foundation.com. 7-on-7 in Columbia at Cardinal Newman High School, right? 2 Fridays from now, the way that you can help out, and one of the ways you can help out, and plenty of ways you can be a part of the PD3 Foundation. I wanted to get your thoughts about what do you've been to some noon games, haven't you, at Williams Bryce Stadium in
Oh,
September?
of course. Yeah, I just saw that schedule release. The first one's a night game. That's cool. I know they got new LED and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be fun to get under the lights for the first one. Obviously with Spencer Rattler and everything. So there's plenty of storylines to get excited for the first game. That's going to be no problem. Let's see. What's the second game? What is that? At Arkansas, it's also noon.
Yep.
And
So
then
I need you.
Georgia's home at noon.
Yeah, you got to play along and fill in the blank Friday. September noon games at Williams Bryce Stadium are
Let's go with a marathon.
a marathon. Okay.
Because as a former student who liked to get a little rowdy for those noon games, I know that when you're starting at 8 a.m., you kind of got to be careful a little bit because you're out there
Mhm.
in the heat all day. It's a marathon. That's what I'll go with. Yeah, I feel
Okay.
good about that one.
A marathon versus the sun. It sounds like what you were saying on that one.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it in so many ways, man. And what about Shane Beamer and company? What are you thinking? To
Yeah.
me, I understood the hire. I wasn't necessarily I didn't think it was gonna be a home run necessarily just because, man, you got such a challenge at the end of the Will Muschamp era,
Yeah.
and coming off of Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier, who had plenty of experience and national championships under their belt and still could only take it so far, to see a guy come in with no head coaching experience, right? I understand Beamer's track record and different places and the whole thing, also with his experience at South Carolina that made him different. But about midway through last season, I was like, I don't know, this is going to work, man.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, and clearly the bowl game has changed my opinion drastically. And I think most out there, you on that same kind of line of thinking about all of that, or were you smarter than me and could see silver linings a little earlier?
I don't think you have to ask that question. You know that's not going to happen. I don't think I could be smarter than you about anything. But I think I do often think if let's pretend we get blown out in that bowl game, how do we feel? Coming into this season, does Spencer Rattler come? There's just a bunch of questions. I think that bowl game was huge in so many ways. It got people excited. It got people wanting to watch. For next season. Obviously, with the transfers that helped too. What the original thoughts when I first saw the hire, I thought okay, kind of similar to you, like interesting in the fact that it's such a big program. Obviously, just coming to the SEC, like the fact that you don't get a name, at least nationally speaking. Sure, we knew who he was because of the USC connection, and I think that helped obviously a ton. It had to. I know there were a lot of former players who have been pushing to bring in more former players to help with the program, that sort of thing, keeping the alumni, close kind of deal. I think it helped a lot. So yeah, I will say I was cautiously optimistic, but one of the things I loved about it is just the fact that he said it multiple times. It was his dream job. Like this is what he wanted to be here. He was fired up about it. He brought in so much energy. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun watching going forward. And clearly, he knows how to recruit at least through the transfer portal, if nothing else. So
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. The fit of a person at a job, I think, is the older I get, the more I value that, and the more I think, or the more examples maybe I see of a job and a person, and it's a good job and it's a good person, right? But that doesn't mean it's going to be a good match. And this one, I think, has been a really good match, or is, and it will continue to be for so many reasons. Chief amongst that is knowing the particular challenge of coaching at South Carolina and knowing how to navigate those challenges. Like the most recent example I'll give you is that Shane Beamer showed up at the York County Gamecock Club event like last week.
mm,
Other head coaches haven't done that for a while, or certainly Will Muschamp didn't. And but and his reaction, I think, is a very typical Gamecock fan when like, I don't understand that. I don't know why, but that's not gonna be the case because that's a really small thing you can do that
Mm,
people in the state of South Carolina especially understand. But if you are, from the SEC, right, and you think you're just changing the logo and you're loyal to who writes the paycheck or, uh, the Will Muschamp mentality, if you're Steve Spurrier, you don't give a rip about Rock Hill and, how many people are gonna be there. Does my contract say I gotta be there, right? But Shane Beamer gets that, and I think that's a large part of getting it, meaning getting the job. Now you gotta continue to get guys in like Spencer Rattler and the whole thing, and
yeah.
clearly he's already done that in year number 1, so that's where I'm coming from on Shane Beamer at this point.
Yeah, and I also think you like what you're saying is so true in the fact, and I think he's getting that from his experience here. When he was here, look at why we were so good, because we had all those in-state, 4 or 5 star recruits that stayed here because they wanted to be a part of the South Carolina Gamecock program. So I think he's seeing that and saw how we built that and saying we can't let these guys leave the state. So what does he do? He's going out to events like that, and I think that helps so much.
And not just getting players, right? All college football coaches everywhere want to go get players, and if there's a guy, they're going to make a trip and the whole thing. But also, I think you got to understand, state of South Carolina is a small state, and people talk, and you can only fake it for so long, and then you will be exposed one
I
way or the
know.
other.
Yeah.
So the fact that you just know what Rock Hill kind of represents that area. You got to go. It doesn't matter if there are players there that are going to be there next year. Who knows? I mean, 10 years down the line, you might get the benefits, right? But it's stuff like that, that culture stuff. I always thought that was overhyped when Lou Holtz came in, said he wanted to change the culture because I didn't think he really knew anything about the culture of South Carolina. Like he looked it up, right?
Right.
I'll never forget on campus when I was a student there, my senior year, he comes in and he reads like the history of the fighting Gamecock and does his magic tricks and tries to get people all fired up, and it worked,
Yeah.
right? That was him, but it only worked for so long
Yeah.
because ultimately he wasn't that interested in living in Columbia, South Carolina, and being at South Carolina. No one in my time, other than Ray Tanner, has embraced Columbia like Shane Beamer has embraced it, and certainly no head football coach like he
And
has.
Dunstable, I would say. Yeah.
And I think that will continue to pay off for him. Maybe not wins and losses. You still got to win games, no doubt. And you're right, that bowl game massive in so many ways. But if you stack that on top of each other, right? You win enough games and you're doing this to kind of build goodwill. Uh, I think it's going to help recruit, like you mentioned, and the whole thing. That's the formula at South Carolina that I don't know we've ever seen it executed like we're watching it now.
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is automatically going to get Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks to the tip top of the college football mountain. That is a long road, man. But I do think it gives him some advantages or makes him the right guy at the right time after this Will Muschamp mess.
Yeah, and I don't think and I'm not talking about the very top of the college football mountain, but I don't think turning around to being competitive in every single game is that far away. In terms of if you come in, you're loyal to a program, you want to be there, and you do things right and recruit, and keep guys in the area, and don't let your good players leave in that transfer portal now. I think it's really not that far off for the facilities we have, the area, the SEC competition, and a guy who wants to be there and obviously knows how to lead. He seems like a fantastic leader. So I don't think it's that far off, especially if, let's say, Rattler comes in and does a great job. I'm not talking wins a Heisman or anything, but what if he just does really well and performs well, and then goes on and is a top 2 round draft pick or something? Anything like that, I think that would just do so much for our program, just to show that you can come. I mean, we've shown in the past that you can come here and be an incredible NFL talent, and Pro Bowler. But just to remind people that, and maybe win, 7, 8 games, and then push that up in a couple of years, 9, 10. Getting back to that 9, and then maybe in a dream scenario, scratching the double digit surface here in just a few years would be incredible.
Well, definitely seen South Carolina players be really good NFL players at other positions. You hadn't seen it at quarterback.
No, 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 no. And you're right. Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
We saw Connor Shaw be a very good college quarterback, but we haven't seen that next level for the
I
Gamecocks.
think he got one start maybe for the Browns or something like that. Yeah.
But other SEC programs seemingly have hit, right? Other major college programs out there have always found one guy at one point that went on and then could also do it in the NFL to some degree. I get it. It would be a bit of an asterisk, I think, for Spencer Rattler to be South Carolina's guy,
Yeah,
but I don't think Gamecock fans would mind one bit, right? At this point,
take
as
it.
long as you see that progression, and that would also mean that Marcus Satterfield would solidify his spot at offensive coordinator, which was very shaky last year in year number one. Maybe to be expected with the talent that was around there, right? But uh, this year there will be no excuse with that.
You're right, and I think solidifying that role is important to get recruits to come in too, because I don't think there's not a whole. I mean, there's not a whole lot of 5-star, quarterbacks that want to come into a role where it's like, I think the offensive coordinator will be here for a year. Like, you don't know. So I mean, if you show a good year here, then yeah, that solidifies that position, and I think that would help in recruiting even more.
RDW is part of the Twitter handle there for Dakota Watson at DWatson WRDW. Yeah, I guess since the last time I talked to you with a mic in front of us, you've gone on to the television career. How is that these days, man? Uh, and I guess what about living in Augusta? Having always been a Columbia guy, I never, I made a bunch of trips over to Augusta. Typically, I was lucky enough to go to the Masters. But how does it break down from the South Carolina fan, the Georgia fan, because it's obviously closer to the University of South Carolina, but in the state of Georgia, I imagine there are more dog fans around.
Yeah, we're not far from Athens, though. It's probably
I think it's
only a little bit
pretty
further.
close. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Almost
yeah.
middle ground there. Yep.
But I will say, especially this year, boy, I'm telling you, sports wise, this was crazy over here in Augusta. Because yeah, I would say it's majority Bulldog fans. I'm betting at least 65% or so. A little too specific there, but anyways, yeah, it's probably around there. I would bet. But of course, then you had them win a national championship. You had the Braves, which huge Braves fan. You had the Braves this past year, and then of course the Masters was incredible just because Tiger was playing. That was his first one. Then he shot one under in the first round. So I mean, sports didn't get a whole lot better in this area year to year. It's been incredible.
And have you been able to tolerate it being a South Carolina alum, sir?
The good news is there are a lot of Gamecocks in our newsroom, but there are also a lot of Bulldogs. So it's probably, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 Bulldogs, maybe about 5 or 6 Gamecocks. So at least I've got some company here. Our sports director's a Gamecocks as well, so we've got that to lean on. But yeah, it can be a little tough sometimes, especially when things aren't always going our way against them. Although we did pull it off a couple of years ago. So,
What is the biggest misconception about Augusta, Georgia?
ooh, let's see. I guess just off the top of my head, I would say that the Masters in here and that's it. Some people think like, oh yeah, it's just this small little town with the Masters, but that's really about it. That's not the case at all. So I mean, there's a lot to do here. It's a great city. I love this area. Everybody is super nice, but of course it's the South, so you're probably gonna get that everywhere around here, anyways. But yeah, the Masters is obviously a huge part of it, and what Augusta National does for this community. I don't think a lot of people realize how much they do for this community, just in terms of dollars, donation. They do so much for this community and build up so much of this community. So, but we are a lot more than that here, and it's a great place to not only come visit, but hang out and stay a while.
Uh, Comparing it to Columbia, how does it compare? Obviously, not the state capital,
Mhm.
and you just over the state line there, so straddling that a little bit with North Augusta and the state of South Carolina. Other than that, though, how does it compare?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little smaller, obviously, but definitely in terms of the sports world, it's got the same buzz about it. It has a little bit bigger feel than I think it is. I don't know what the numbers are in terms of Augusta, but we've kind of got that surrounding area. It's similar to Columbia. It kind of depends on what you're counting. Irma, Lexington, do we count all that? West Columbia, Casey area. But if you count everything that's kind of around here in the CSRA, as we call it, it's actually a pretty good size. I actually live in North Augusta, so I'm on the South Carolina side, which I love North Augusta. It's obviously a little bit of a smaller town, but I'm 5 minutes, not even. I'm the first exit off, so right there by Augusta. But the area is great.
Good stuff, man. And have you? I see the picture at the Masters at Augusta National. How familiar are you with the golf course? And if you tell me you've played the golf course, we're gonna have to fight.
Played twice. I'm
Ah,
just kidding. I never played. I just want to see your face. No,
how dare
that would be a dream. I hope to one day. That would be something else. I would say I'm fairly familiar. This was my first year going out there. I got to go out there twice this year. But I mean, yeah, fairly familiar. As soon as you walk up to Amen Corner, like all of it's great, all of it's great. But then as soon as you walk up to the first tee box, and watching some of those guys go, the first group, I think I saw the first group go off one day. I was like, ooh, wow, this is special. But then when you actually walk through it and get to go over, to Amen Corner, and you walk up there in between 12 and 13, you're like, I understand why they call it. I mean, like, there's so many reasons they call it that, but I understand one of them is because you're standing there and this looks like at least golf heaven, if not actual heaven, because it's immaculate. It's so awesome. So, yeah, I'd say fairly okay. I know most of the holes at least.
Impressive. Jason weighing in on the YouTube live stream says he likes the Miller Theater in Augusta. You familiar?
Oh yeah, I actually don't think I've been there to see anything yet, but I am familiar. I'll have to go soon.
Meredith, too bad. She says, I played Augusta National. Don't hate me, Tim. Too bad, Meredith. Too bad. I'm just jealous because, they have a media nerd lottery every year,
Yes.
and I was in it for like 10 years, never won it. So I'm just bitter.
A
Sorry for
couple of my coworkers have gotten in that. I actually went to the women's amateur too, which was a lot of fun. That was a great tournament. So,
and that's the week before the Masters, right? That's when they do that.
So they actually do. They play the first couple rounds at Champions Retreat, which is only about probably 15 minutes away, and then they do the final round once you have the top 30 make the cut. They do the final round of the Augusta National on that Saturday.
Well, good stuff, man. Anything else that I missed, especially about the PD3 Foundation? Again, PD3Foundation.com is the place to go. He's Dakota Watson from WRDW in the Augusta TV affiliate over there, and doing good things, trying to honor the memory of your former classmate and teammate, and doing it over at Cardinal Newman High School, and trying to raise awareness for mental health. Kudos to you, sir. Any final words?
No, I really do appreciate it, and as I've said to some other people, it's just important for people like you to be able to have somebody on to talk about it, and to be open to talking about mental health, mental illness, substance abuse, all those things that are uncomfortable to talk about. I find myself stumbling when I talk about it all the time because it's uncomfortable. But we're getting better at it as a society. I think, especially as a country, we're getting there. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but it's getting more acceptable to talk about, which I think is the direction we need to keep going in. But yeah, I mean, that's really about it. I really do appreciate you being able to talk about it.
Absolutely, and I will definitely talk some junk for you when Perry Orth comes on here in a few minutes. And congratulations on your victory and your personal dominance over him.
I will deny everything you say, and hopefully he doesn't rewind this show.
Perfect. Perfect. Dakota Watson, ladies and gentlemen, PD3Foundation.com is the place to go. Again, help out a good cause. Have some fun while you're doing it. Play a little 7-on-7 football, which if you've never played before, if you like any kind of other sport, you will like the version of 7-on-7 football or flag football or however many people they get going out there. It's just so fun.